Hello, welcome to episode 22 of the Indie Author Mindset podcast with me, Adam Croft. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode. We've had a lot of feedback on that, the interview with David and Mark, talking about how he was dropped by his publisher and he's since gone indie. He's also talked about his battles with mental health and how he comes through that and how you can battle on during this lockdown period, which does, thankfully, seem to be continuing in some form or another, even though here in the UK we're not entirely sure what form that is taking, it seems. Before we get into things properly, I need to mention that this podcast is gratefully sponsored by Ingram Spark, the award-winning indie publishing platform that offers authors like you a way to get your paperbacks and hardbacks into over 40,000 bookstores and libraries worldwide. Let Ingram Spark take care of the details so you can focus on what you do best, which is writing. Get started today at ingramspark.com, and up until the end of this month, up until the end of May 2020, you can use the code IngramSpark 2020, that's INGRAMSPARK 2020, to get free title setup and revisions. If there is any subject or angle you want me to cover on this podcast, if anything that springs into your mind as you're listening today, or if you've got anything you want me to cover, just email podcast@indieauthormindset.com or catch me in the Indie Author Mindset Facebook group. There have been a few news stories that have popped up this week which have been very, very interesting. One which took my eye is the story about the trouble at Bertrams, which has been mentioned in a few news sources this week. Bertrams are one of the main distributors of paperbacks here in the UK, along with Gardeners. The rumours have been that administrators are about to be called in to Bertrams again. The owners have confirmed that the company's future is under review. Baker and Taylor are also in trouble in the US, it seems, at the same time as Barnes & Noble have been having some difficulties recently, as has been covered on recent episodes. What's interesting is that these all seem to be companies who have essentially put it all on red and gambled everything on bricks and mortar and the old outdated ways of doing things, which it wasn't going to be working anyway, was it? Let's face it. But even a global pandemic can quickly put paid to that strategy. Ingram Spark, Ingram as a whole, naturally, are picking up the slack, it seems, on the distribution front. There have been rumours, especially from Ally, who have been worried about an Ingram monopoly, and I can completely see the reasoning there. But it's not something that worries me too much at the moment. I mean, after all, there's been a prehistoric duopoly of Gardeners and Bertrams for years, and as far as I see it, Ingram focus at least on authors and readers, not on publishers or their own interests. And I say that as a fan of Ingram, not because they're sponsors of the podcast. As you'll know if you listen to any of my podcasts, I don't just take sponsorship from anybody. In fact, if anybody approaches me for sponsorship, I turn them down, and I only go to people and ask them to be sponsors if they are people that I already like, because I'm a bit like that. Also, in the news, BookBub have published a report on how reader behaviour has been changing during the COVID-19 crisis. It's an article that's a couple of weeks old, but we've had quite a lot going on, as you would know if you've listened to the last couple of episodes. Essentially, it seems that during the coronavirus crisis, print sales have continued to decline pretty massively, actually. 10% week on week is what's been reported. Meanwhile, there's been significant growth in online and digital sales. Kobo have reported a massive spike in sales, and I've also seen that in my own reporting, which I'll go onto in a little bit. Draft to Digital, D2D, have said that ebooks for them are up 25%, and library borrows and sales are up by 130%, which is fantastic. Audio initially appeared to take a dip due to people not commuting, and the journeys that people are going on while they're listening to their audio books aren't happening anywhere near as much as they were. So audio did take a dip, but is now apparently back up to normal. So maybe people are getting a bit bored at home and they're heading for their audiobooks anyway. As far as my own sales go, I have also seen things increasing. I said I was going to hold off for a few weeks and see how things went, but I've been doing some number crunching, and I've compared month on month so far this year. Compared to February 2020, my March sales rose by 154% on February. That's overall book sales, and profit in March was up by 223% on February, which of course is very pleasing, both for me and my accountant. I'm still waiting on full data for April at the time of recording. We haven't had the full final reports in, but using provisional figures based on estimates that they're giving me, it looks like both revenue and profits are going to be up by somewhere between 40 to 45% in April on March. So that's good. Of course, I'm getting lots of reports from different authors who are seeing lots of different things, but just to give you a flavour of how things have been going and how the industry is moving, maybe that will be of some benefit to you. Something which will be of benefit to you, particularly if you follow my advice and go wide with your books, is that Apple have finally, it seems, or I think this is what they're on the way to doing, is ditching the dreadful iTunes producer software, and have now given us, as authors, a new way of uploading books to Apple. It's browser-based. It's Authors. Apple Authors is the name of the browser-based app, and the most important thing is it is available on all platforms. So you Windows users can now upload your books directly to Apple without using Mac in Cloud, without having to use iTunes Producer, without having to get hold of another Mac or a reconditioned device. I've seen a lot of people talking about it in the groups. I mean, going out and getting reconditioned machines in order to use this software. You don't need to anymore. Windows users can publish via authors.apple.com. It's a very clean interface. I had a quick browse through. It's quite simple, straightforward, which is a massive, massive improvement for Apple, which has made things extraordinarily confusing with iTunes Producer over the years. It's a huge improvement on that as well, so I would actually recommend it for Mac users too. Certainly give it a whirl, see if it works for you. It's authors.apple.com. You can upload new books that way, you can make changes to your existing books that way, and it is much, much closer to the experience that we all know and love and expect from an online retailer of books. It mirrors the way that KDP works, it mirrors the way that Kobo Writing Life works, so it should be much more familiar, a much smaller learning curve, and a much better experience for everybody. It's particularly good for updating existing books and making changes, which was frankly a nightmare with iTunes Producer. So go and check that out now at authors.apple.com and see if that works for you. If you enjoy this podcast and if you get some value from the Indie Author Mindset community, please do consider joining the Indie Author Mindset's Patreon program. If you join today, you'll get a personalised thank you on the podcast. You'll get a free Indie Author Mindset book of your choice, exclusive access to Patreon-only hints, tips and strategies, which I post in the group every few days, some articles and hints and tips which I don't put anywhere else. You'll get access to an exclusive live monthly Q&A event. You get priority one-on-one help and coaching from me for your books. You can just send me a message through the Patreon messaging system and get direct one-on-one help, no extra cost. You get a free Indie Author Mindset course, a free copy of every Indie Author Mindset book as it's released, and a whole lot more. And it costs, it starts from just $2. So $2, next to nothing, which could revolutionise your author career. You also get early access to this podcast, by the way. Your support really does keep the podcast and the Indie Author Mindset project running. Helps us to empower indie authors, gather knowledge, and help build a better future for you. And we can do even more with more patrons. So if you want to help support us and get access to all of those fantastic benefits, just head over to patreon.com/Indie Author Mindset or check out the link in the show notes. I want to say thank you to the new patrons this week, people who have joined us on the podcast, on the Patreon, sorry. So thank you to Craig White, Dan Friedman, Lucy Selwood and J.L. Sampson. Thank you very much to you guys. Thank you also to everybody who's been giving the Indie Author Mindset Ninja a lot of love. Feels like he's got a bigger fan base than me, which is nice. And I do, for those of you who love the Indie Author Mindset Ninja, have this week for you, and there's a nice convoluted sentence, an Indie Author Mindset Ninja tip. Hoo-yah! If you run a price promotion on your ebooks, make sure you check which royalty plan you're on when you change the price back. For example, if you've got a book at $3.99 or $4.99 on Amazon and you're at 70% royalty because of that, if you drop your price to 99 cents, it will, of course, drop you down onto 35% royalties. When you put your price back up, make sure you've also selected the 70% royalty option again. I've been victim of this myself. I've put a price down to 99 cents for a promo. I've put the price back up again, and I've kept myself inadvertently on 35% and given half of my royalties away to Amazon, which isn't something you want to do if you can help it. And don't forget, if you've got a top tip or a question or just anything that you want me to cover on this podcast, please do let me know. This is your podcast. I'm willing to do the legwork, do the investigative work and help you guys out. So just get in touch with me by emailing podcast@indieauthormindset.com. I'm on Twitter @AdamCroft and also now at IA Mindset, the new Indie Author Mindset Twitter feed, which is live. It's empty at the moment, but the stuff will be going up there very soon, so get following that for more exclusive hints and tips. I'm on Instagram as well, and of course on Facebook in the Indie Author Mindset Facebook group. I'll be back again next week, hopefully, with another episode, but until then, please do stay safe and take care. This episode of the Indie Author Mindset podcast was presented by me, Adam Croft. The Indie Author Mindset podcast is sponsored by Ingram Spark, helping you get your book into over 40,000 bookstores and libraries worldwide. Get started today at ingramspark.com. The theme music for this podcast is by the Caesareans. Don't forget you can claim 50% off any Indie Author Mindset course by entering the promo code podcast at the checkout. Links are in the show notes. For more great tips and guidance, join the Indie Author Mindset group on Facebook.